All right, let's start our conversation with lists. These are the most common data structures in Python, and they can include pretty much anything, integer, floating point numbers, strings, even you can have a list within a list, and they're very versatile. We specifically want to focus on these common operations when we are working with lists. Being able to access items, modify them, add some item, remove some items. These are common things that you do when you're using a list. Slicing and finding the length. And we'll talk a little bit about strings and how they can be interpreted as lists. So, as I said in the previous video, my plan is to also create a repository and kind of practice working with Git command and GitHub. So I'm going to click on new on my GitHub repository, and let's call it M375 or maybe we say lecture 1, just call it that. And then for the codes for the first lecture, I'm going to keep it private. I'm going to add the README file there. I'm going to create the repository. Now I have a repository, some random README file is there, and it's pretty empty. So I'm going to go to clone code. If you have set up an SSH key, you can use SSH command, but I haven't. I don't think I've done that for my personal laptop. So go to HTTPS, I copy the URL, and then I'll go to my VS Code, which is pretty empty, nothing there. I have my Explorer, nothing is open there. I have my extensions. At this point you should have Python, PyLens, and Python debugger. Aside from that, there is no specific extension. I have a few others. It's up to you if you end up finding some of those extensions in the marketplace useful for what you're doing. So I'll go back to Explorer. Here I have the option clone repository. So I click on clone repository, and this is where it's asking me to clone from GitHub. So I paste the address I copied, and I click on clone from URL. It's asking me to find a place or define a folder on my computer to put this repository there. I'll put it under courses for now. I'll select this folder, and it's going to clone the repository, and this message should pop up asking you if you want to add it to your workspace or open in a new window, cancel or open. I'll select add to workspace since I'm going to work in this repository, and it's asking me if I trust the author. Of course I do, that's me. So then you can see in your Explorer you get the repository, and the only thing is there is the README file and the explanation I put. Right. So I'm going to right click and create a new file, and I'll call it lecture. It's not technically lecture 1. I'll call it lecture1.python, and then this is now my Python code. At this point, depending on if you define some environment, Python environment, your Python version might be different, your environment name might be different. Mine is base here. If you click on that, you will see on your computer the list of all the environments defined, what Python version is used for that environment, and etc. I'm going to keep it simple for now and don't define an environment for this lecture. We'll stick to my base environment. Alright, so here is everything we want to cover. Right? As I said, lists are ordered, or as we saw in this slide, are simple structures that can contain anything basically. They can contain lists. You're going to see an example. I'll show you nested lists, we call. They're ordered, they're mutable sequences, and that mutable is important because when we talk about tuples, you will see that tuples are all different. So let's focus on the operations and adding items. I guess I can start with maybe defining a list. All right, if I want to define a list, let's say I call this my list with some numbers, and then I can print my list. And to run the code, well, you have multiple options. You can click on run and run Python file, which runs the whole code. You can highlight the lines you want to run, right click and go to run Python, and then run selection line in Python terminal, and you can see the shortcut for me. Oh, maybe you can't see it. The shortcut for me is shift enter. So I'm gonna select this, right click, go to run Python and use run selection line in Python terminal. This brings up a Python terminal. It goes to Python environment and runs the code, and it shows me the the output of these few lines. Right, I could do it by just selecting and pressing shift enter on my keyboard. It will give me the same thing. Right. All right, so things are set up now. Let's talk about all these possible. I'm gonna close that. These options, not options, specific operations. We're going to take a look at some examples on how do we do these in Python and interact with lists.